Did you know that by the end of this event, 3 men in the UK will have died by suicide? I can still remember exactly where I was when my dad called me to tell me that they found my uncle. He had taken his life, and it had taken 3 weeks to find his body.
I pulled that song not only from previous experiences, but I think my whole life. I think everything is drawn out of that, even situations from Good Kid, Mad City. It wasn't that much. It wasn't that vulnerable. Nothing was as vulnerable as that record. So it's even pulling from those experiences of coming up in Compton. It's pulling with the experience of going through change and accepting change. That's the hardest thing for man, accepting change. And when I was on that tour bus and things is happening back home in my city or in my family that I can't do nothing about, it's out of my control, I don't can put it in God's hands, I couldn't understand that. And that can draw a thin line, between you having your sanity and you losing it. And this is how artists deteriorate if you don't catch yourself. So with these things happening, my release therapy is writing the music. And this was one of the records that came about. And I said to myself, I couldn't have this album without this record.
Richard was 47. He was a doctor, super smart, creative, artistic. He spoke new languages with ease, he played and wrote music, and he understood science and maths like no one else I knew. He was the kind of kid you'd really hate at school, right? He saved people's lives for a living, and yet he decided to take his own. I'd like to take you back to 2010. I was at my new flat in Brighton having dinner with a friend, about to start my 3rd year of university, when my dad calls me to tell me that they found my uncle. That feeling, that sinking feeling in your stomach when your heart drops all the way down and all you can think is, what could I have done to stop that from happening? That feeling is not something I wish anyone ever has to experience. Men are facing a crisis. How many men do you think die by suicide each day in the UK? Have a guess.
Because, let's put it this way, the overall theme for me personally for this album is really leadership. How can I use it, for better or for worse? With money and with my celebrity, how can I use it? How can I pimp it? Can I pimp it negatively, or can I pimp it in a positive way? Positive for me is showing what I go through, showing what I've been through with you, and coming all the way back to and saying I still love myself at the end of the day.
Under 5? Under 10? It's 12. That's 1 man every 2 hours. While we're all enjoying our day, we're going to lose 12 men to suicide today. In my work, we talk a lot about the fact that 76% of all suicides are male, and that this silent killer is claiming the lives of more men under 45 than anything else. And I can't help but find myself asking, why is that? Doesn't that trouble you? Because it troubles me. These are our brothers, fathers, uncles, partners, sons. These are our friends, and they decide to die. I think there are some hard questions we need to ask about male suicide. I don't believe there is anything wrong with men having suicidal thoughts. But is there something wrong with how we react to suicide being thought about? Let me explain. We'll all die at one point or another, right? Our bodies will fail us and we'll die of disease or old age. Or we'll have our lives taken from us, maybe in a tragic accident. So, isn't it perfectly normal to consider being in control of our own death?
Which was interesting where you talk about it. I used to be jealous of Aaron Afalo,
Right.
who was an NBA player who came up in Compton like you. And to me, I see it like if y'all Compton caterpillars that turned into butterflies, he turned into the butterfly, and then there was a jealousy and an envy that he got out to see the world and make it out.
Exactly.
You make it out, and then you rap A Friend Never Leaves Compton for Profit.
Yeah.
Like it's some serious survivor's guilt going on.
It's definitely survivor's guilt. A lot of the album has that survivor's guilt from institutionalized. How can I use my influence with other cats coming into the city and me still being involved in the activities, inside the streets? How can I influence that in a positive way? That's part of survivor's guilt.
Yes, suicide is intentional, but does that automatically make it wrong? I believe suicide is preventable, and I believe we should do everything in our power to prevent it. But I also believe there's nothing inherently wrong in thinking about our own death. I've considered what it's like to die. I'd like to ask you all to close your eyes just for a minute. I promise nothing scary will happen if you close your eyes. Now raise your hands if you've ever had a really bad day that's left you feeling maybe stressed or upset. Okay, keep your eyes closed and keep your hands raised if that bad day or bad week or bad month has ever led you to think about harming yourself or taking your own life. Thank you. Put your hands down and then open your eyes. That was about half of this room. I invite you to consider what might be different if we didn't see having suicidal thoughts as wrong, and what that might mean for the men in our lives thinking of suicide. Let's go back to my Uncle Richard. For most of his life, he experienced what was most likely bipolar, and he had suicidal thoughts on more than one occasion. In fact, 6 years before his death, he attempted to take his life. The sad fact was that Richard lived in a time where suicide wasn't considered something that you spoke about. It was swept under the carpet and a cause of shame amongst families. There was something wrong with it. I mean, it was only in 1961 that we stopped making suicide a crime. Richard's parents were medics, an anaesthetist and a nurse, and they didn't understand suicide either. They didn't think that it was real, and I think they were probably in denial about what was happening.
When you're supposed to be
enjoying it, yeah. Whether you Kanye tour prior to that, before that, when I went overseas, you know, I gotta get off stage and almost face the madness and get these calls. You feel me? Like, it's real, man.
What happened to my uncle isn't my grandparents' fault. Suicide is complex and rarely attributed to any one factor. But when I reflect on Richard's experience and on how we still struggle to speak about suicide today, nothing's really changed. We still struggle to talk about it. We label it as abnormal or unusual, and we make men wrong for having suicidal thoughts. We say that they're unwell or that they need to get better. And because we think of it this way, it stops us from being able to talk about it, and we stay silent instead. And suicide remains shrouded in this stigma. That stigma is only perpetuated by irresponsible and sensationalized journalism that happens in the cases of celebrity suicide. Just look at some of the reporting around Anthony Bourdain's recent death. Yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. I get that. But we do it with sex. Every parent dreads having that conversation with their kids about how babies are made. But we know it's important to keep our kids safe. So we do it anyway, no matter how uncomfortable we feel. I wish I could have had a conversation with my uncle like the one I had with Billy. I wish I could have told him, there is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with how you're feeling or what you're thinking. It's okay. I'm here to listen to whatever you need to say or talk about. Because your feelings are important. You're important. And you don't have to do this alone. Thank you.